Okay, what is going on, guys? We are back. This is going to be Flesh and Blood TCG, myself versus Slidemo, and this is going to be the semifinals of the UK Online League Season 2. So I have streamed some other videos from this event and from the first season of this event earlier, but right now, Slidemo defeated Tiny Grimes' warrior with his Katsu in a game that I had streamed earlier, and now I'm going to see if my own warrior can have any better luck. Now, what I do have going for me is that this does tend to be a matchup that is favorable for the warrior. It seemed like he was playing a pretty aggro ninja in the previous game, and in general, aggro ninja has a little trouble because some of the best cards for aggro ninja do only block for 2, and because they're only blocking for 2, that's giving warrior an opportunity to threaten damage that's going to be difficult to defend against, and the prospect of those Dawnblade counters often means that someone has to defend with weaker blocks. By contrast, the type of ninja that we're seeing from the kind of hybrid ninjas in Blitz that Ira is playing, for instance, that has the a lot more block 3 cards and the flick flacks, that's going to be easier to deal with a warrior. But in Constructed, that style isn't quite as prevalent, though I have streamed some games with a deck that's kind of going for that sort of thing in the Constructed environment as well. All right, so here we are. It's my warrior against his ninja. He won the roll-off and chose for me to go first. That is generally, I think, a good choice in this matchup, as that in an aggro versus aggro matchup, you often want to be the player who is going to be going second, as you have the first opponent to take the first opportunity to take your opponent's tempo. I have a really bad hand here, so I have 3 blues and a scar for a scar. Let's see what I make out of it. So 3 blues and scar for a scar. So I'm going to my plan is to arsenal the Scar for a Scar here, and then maybe get hit by him on his turn and use that to sneak in with the Scar. But to start off the game here, I'm thinking that because my hand is so bad, I actually have to swing. I often like to just arsenal pass on the first turn to avoid giving my opponent the chance to mulligan, but I want the chance to mulligan given how bad this hand is. My thinking is that I can, in this situation, if he doesn't block, I can play the Out for Blood for the +1. Maybe he counters it, but whatever. And then I'm not playing the other cards there because I do want to save them for the next turn. I'm just getting rid of one of those blues, and I'll arsenal the Scar. I draw 2 more cards, hopefully get something that's going to allow me to be a little bit more aggressive. Now, this isn't really what I most want to see. The things that I most want to see on the opening hand, if I have to go first, would be a copy of Energy Potion, which is a good card to play on the first turn. It avoids the opponent having that opportunity to kind of mulligan, and it can be useful for the future. I like to see the I also really like to see Flock at the Featherwalkers that can, yes, the opponent can probably block it, but you can get that quicken token that's going to set you up for the next turn. Yeah, that's right. White Erendur says Flock, and yeah, Flock is one of the best ones that you can see on that first turn. Okay, so then I end up throwing out a swing. He does block with 2 cards, and so he does get a little bit of a mulligan, kind of overblocking there in case I have a big attack reaction play, which is a prudent thing to do. But he is going to kind of have the initiative on this one. He's going to have the first major attack. And looking at my hand here, I've drawn into a blue overpower. I do have an E-Strike, so looking at this hand, again, this is not really the greatest hand. One thing that I can potentially do, though, is if he hits me with anything, and Ninja very likely is going to do that initial attack for 1 damage with a Kadachi. So if he hits me with a Kadachi and I take 1 damage, that enables the Scar for a Scar that I have in Arsenal, which will allow me to do Scar for a Scar. I think my dream play is something like Scar for a Scar, pitch the blue overpower, hit and run, swing the Dawnblade, maybe buff it with Out for Blood, or maybe just play the E-Strike. The problem is that's like a 5-card hand, and if I want to do a 5-card hand, I'm going to have to not block at all, and an aggro ninja deck is usually something that you are going to have to do a few blocks against. So the Kadachi comes in, and I do take the hit. So the first part of my plan is working. I will be able to play that Scar for a Scar with the go again. I'm happy about that. Now we're going to see how the second part works. He comes in with Leg Tap for 4. So Leg Tap for 4, if it hits go again, classic aggro ninja card, the red Leg Tap. And I'm thinking about it. So one thing that I could do is not block this, but if he hits me with this, it is going to allow him to potentially use Katsu's ability to get another step in his combo. I also might want to block this just because it is the second phase. So because I have a relatively weaker hand, I feel more comfortable blocking than I do normally. I go for just a 4 block. I did see that he discarded an Ancestral Empowerment early, so the odds that he has another one are relatively low at this point. And because that card doesn't have combo, he can't use Breaking Scales with it, so I block for 4. And he is then going to play a... We had a few issues with lag and stuff in this game. But yeah, so then we're going to see a... Torrent of Tempo coming in for 5, and if it hits, go again. He doesn't have any energy, and I've broken his mask trigger, so I'm not that worried about this go again. I'm just going to block with 1 more card and take 2 damage. And now I'm thinking I can throw out a fair amount of damage of my own by using Scar for a Scar into E-Strike. I can do... There's various ways that I might want to do that. You know, I could do Scar 4, E-Strike 7 for the potential 11 damage. I could do Scar 4, E-Strike 5, draw a card to potentially increase my own tempo. There's really a fair number of things to consider at this point. The problem with going for the card draw play is that if you draw something that's bad in Arsenal, then you just sort of wasted it. So it's a little bit of a riskier play, but it can get you higher expected value under some circumstances. Nevertheless, I think that turn went okay. You know, I did have to use some cards defending, and I did use my Refraction Bolters as well, but ultimately I'm not too concerned. So I take my Tunic, and then I swing in with Scar for a Scar, coming in for 4 with Go Again, because I do have less life than my opponent. Scar for a Scar, very classic card, very strong card for aggro decks in general. Getting those little opportunities where you're going to be able to play 0 cost for Strength 4 Go Again, that can be quite useful. So Slidemo thinking about how to defend against this. So on the plus side for him, this attack doesn't have anything special, no on-hit effect, no real like scary follow-up that he could potentially be hit by. So really what he's thinking about when this Scar for a Scar is coming in is, you know, do I want to take damage or do I not want to take damage? This early in the game with the life totals this high, I think the right move is often going to be to not take damage. Tempo is usually more important than damage. I think I would probably rather have him lose a card from hand and take 1 than I would have him just take 4 overall. Now, if you get later in the game and people start getting really low, that equation can definitely change. But we both have a high health pool that you can block with. So some people kind of think of their health pool as something that you have to defend all the time. I don't think that's correct. I think that your health pool is basically a resource with which you can buy non-blocks. And eventually you're going to run out of that resource. But, you know, in the meantime, when there are these attacks that are just damage with no powerful on-hit or anything like that that would make you want to block them, just taking the damage with your life total is a good idea. And that is what he chooses to do. So then I'm going to come in with the Enlightened Strike. So I could do E-Strike 5 Go Again, but I wouldn't have energy to do anything with it, so that would be bad. So the choice is between E-Strike 7 and E-Strike Draw. I do go for E-Strike Draw, and I get lucky here with a Razor Reflex. That's one of the better cards that I could draw to put into Arsenal, because this is going to allow me to have that attack reaction saved up to maybe make a cool play later on in the game. And it is also going to mean that a card that only blocks for 2 is now going to be out of my deck. So it's kind of interesting. I think that Ninja can be somewhat similar to Warrior in that you don't really want to have cards that block for 2 when you're defending against an aggro Ninja. So we're both playing kind of aggressive decks where the cards that aren't blocking fully are going to be kind of liabilities if the opponent is doing a big turn. Now, the downside to this play is that my opponent can, again, choose to just take damage if he wants to. So he could go down to 31 and then be in a spot where he can potentially throw a 5-card hand at me. And I will have a card in my arsenal, and it is going to be a good card to have in arsenal, but I won't necessarily have the best setup possible. So we'll see how this game continues. If I were him, I would be strongly considering just taking the hit and coming back big, but it also depends on what he has in hand. He may have cards in hand that are not very practical, or that he doesn't have a good way to use in the context of his attack, like combo pieces for combos that he's not doing, for instance, or a common one for Ninja. So in that case, it might be prudent to block with one of those in order to try and just limit the amount of damage that he's taking, because even though your life points are better viewed as a resource, you know, you don't want to spend the resource needlessly. This is one of the things that I really like about Flesh and Blood, the decisions that you have to make between playing cards, blocking with cards, pitching with them. There's really a lot of interest there. Raven the Red says, is there any merit to pitching Overpower for a Dawnblade swing and arsenaling the E-Strike? Yes, that is an option. One of the downsides of that is that I wouldn't have a great follow up. I could potentially do it and then use the refraction bolters and swing it again for 4 if he lets it in. But I was hoping to do something maybe threatening a little more damage immediately. He does go for a single block, and so I arsenal the Razor. So we can imagine a scenario where we do something like that, except instead it's the Dawn Blade swing and he does a single block, and I arsenal E-Strike. Debatably, E-Strike would be better to have an arsenal than this Razor, though I think it's mixed. But that wouldn't have done the 2 damage, and there is the possibility that he doesn't block, at which point I have to decide whether or not I want to use my Refraction Bolters this early in the game. Typically, you want to save Refraction Bolters. Ideally, you're going to be using it on a turn where you also have Steel Blade Supremacy in order to get you the potential card draw, as that can make making the big Steel Blade Supremacy turns more explosive can be really valuable. So my opponent comes in here pitching a blue copy or a fine center. The only version is blue. Coming in first for 1 with a Kadachi, which I let in, and then for a Surging Strike 4. So I know that he blocked with a Magenshi release that he had in hand. It might so that I'm thinking at this point, because he blocked with the Magenshi release, that probably signals that he doesn't have the rest of the combo. Because if he did have a Whelming Gust Wave, he could probably play it and then play the Magenshi release to be really threatening, and likely would have done that instead of this game plan. At least that's my reasoning. But we'll see if I'm right. So Katsu's ability here, once per turn effect, when an attack action card you control hits, you may discard a card with cost 0. If you do, search your deck for a card with combo, banish it face up, then shuffle your deck. You may play it this turn. So this is a tactic that people are using to run the combo cards. So the IRA decks that people are running in Blitz are only running combo cards kind of for the defense usually, and don't really have a reliable way to actually play out the combo. Whereas these constructed decks are often running like multiple combo lines, and then using Katsu's ability to kind of do a little bit of fixing, where if one of the combos, let's say they only have the first part, but they have the second part from another combo. If that second part also costs 0 for both, you can discard one to get the other. So he surprises me here by discarding a Whelming Gust Wave blue, and I believe he discards it to find a Whelming Gust Wave red and essentially upgrade his attack. So this is surprising to me, because I do think that if I had this hand, I probably would have gone for the Magenshi. I guess on the other hand, though, he probably doesn't have enough components of the combo in his discard for the full Lord of Wind thing to be all that good. So maybe that's what he was thinking. This combo is odd in that the final stage with Lord of Wind is a lot worse if you do it early on without other combo pieces already there. So this Whelming Gust Wave is coming in at strength 4, and if he hits, it will draw a card. He doesn't have any energy floating, though, so I don't have to worry about Razor. I do go for a double block in order to get around the prospect of him using Breaking Scales for the +1. So I am going to stop that. And looking at my hand, I had a relatively poor non-aggressive hand. And as a result of that, I figured going for the block was good. He then comes in with a Salt the Wound, which is strength 2, but it gets +1 for every attack that hit. And therefore, that one is going to be coming in for a total of 4, and I decide to just take it. So at this point, my opponent is ahead on life total, but I have more armor left than he does, so there's that. And then I'm going to lead off with Ravenous Rabble here for 4 go again. And then I have an energy potion, so I really have 2 options after this. One thing that I can do with the energy potion is that I can pitch it and swing Dawnblade, and then potentially use the Refraction Bolters in order to use the floating 2 energy to use Bracers and swing again for 4. So that would be a more aggressive turn that I could do, and then another thing that I could do is just play the energy potion. So just playing the energy potion would be an interesting move. It would give some tempo to my opponent, but it would allow me to have a bigger turn later on in the game. And so the question is it more worth it to do kind of that basic sword swing, or is it better to go with the energy potion? One other thing I could do is I could actually use my tunic to swing the sword and keep the energy potion there, then potentially pitch it to play Razor, and then use potentially use the bolters into Bracers to be very aggressive. But we'll see. So he's thinking about his move here. The more if he decides to keep everything in his hand, that's an indicator that he might have something strong. In this case, he blocks with a CNC. I'm happy to see that. That's a strong card, and 1 damage is going to get through. So I'm thinking about what I want to do, and I'm like, okay, he has a 3-card hand. He will have his Tunic up. He doesn't have anything else, though. He doesn't have a card in Arsenal. I'm sort of thinking here, okay, I bet I can survive. I bet I can survive a 3-card hand. I think it's going to be okay. I'm actually going to play out the energy potion, and that's going to allow me to have a bigger turn later in the game. I then draw on up, and it's now my opponent's turn. White Earender says CNC block is nice. Yeah, I like seeing that often. There are some times when you have to block with CNC because the situation is just not one where it's going to be practical, either because of the opponent not having things in Arsenal, in which case it's kind of wasteful, or because that's just the only thing you have in your hand that blocks. He actually plays another CNC, which makes blocking with the first one make more sense, but he didn't have very much energy, so all he can do is just the basic CNC. He does have the 1 card left in hand. I'm a little worried that his 1 card might be a Lunging Press, which could sneak in over a 6 block. In point of fact, I can't actually do a 6 block, so it doesn't matter. I end up blocking with 2 cards plus the Skull Cap. So the reason that I have the Remembrance in hand, Remembrance is a bad card in this matchup against Aggro Ninja, but I did sideboard it in. So the Remembrance is a important card to have against the Control Ninja, even if it's not as good against Aggro. And I wanted to put that in. I think at least in theory, it may be prudent to decide I'm already favored against Aggro Ninja. I'm going to orient my sideboarding towards Control Ninja, and even if it gives me a bit of a disadvantage, it probably isn't enough of a disadvantage to make this matchup actually bad. And then if they do have the Control Ninja, you'll be a little more prepared. So then I come in with another Scar for a Scar. Scar for a Scar is a really good card. Strength 4 with Go Again here. That's definitely something that's annoying for my opponent, because 4 damage is enough that you only have 40 health, so if you're taking 4 damage hits, you can only do that 10 times and then you're dead. It's just chipping away. It's chipping away at him. Probably the best move is to take the damage in some of these situations, but at the same time, if he constantly does it, it'll end up with his life total getting whittled down. It sort of poses an interesting question, really. Now, of course, the downside of Scar for a Scar is it's not going to have that Go Again if you have more life than your opponent, but in this sort of matchup between 2 aggro decks, often you want to be trading life for tempo anyway, so you can often find an opportunity, I think, when it's good to play the Scar for a Scar. The matchups where the Scar for a Scar is bad is like Wizard, where they start with less life than you and they have more timing control. I usually sideboard out the Scar for a Scar if I am playing against Wizard, and I put in my copies of Irina's Prayer instead. Okay, so then I want to just give some quick shout-outs here to Sharon Hendricks and to Bloomer who followed in between my previous stream and this stream. Thanks for the follows, guys. Much appreciated. Meanwhile, the Scar for a Scar coming in here. I think my opponent was really thinking about what to play on his next turn or something. And it looks like he is putting his hand to the life counter, and I believe deciding, yeah, he's going to just take the damage, and I do think that's likely correct. I then decide to pitch the Remembrance and come in with a Dawnblade swing. I do have the option this turn to go for the Break Bolters and come in, and it has 2 big advantages. So the first one is I can use my Tunic to pay for Bracers if he lets this in and put the Dawnblade up to 4. And then the second thing is I do still have that Razor Reflex from the earlier E-Strike draw play, which is going to allow me to potentially buff this and get over a block in a way that might be desirable. I could pay for it with the Energy Potion, potentially. So having that Energy Potion and my Tunic charged up makes this a better situation than it would seem. This is a 2-card hand and not incredibly aggressive, but I'm still actually quite threatening. And we'll see what my opponent does. What I'm thinking in this situation is if he doesn't block, I'm going to go for the play. If he did block, maybe I would just let him have the block. But he doesn't block, so I am going to use the Bolters. I'm going to use Dorinthea's ability. And then I'm going to use the Tunic, pay for Bracers, swing, coming in at strength 4. If he does block this, so he could block with a 3-block card plus his Breaking Scales. But if he does that, I can use my potion to play the Razor Reflex from Arsenal and potentially get in over his block, depending on if he has a defense item available. The main thing that would really stop this would be a yellow or red copy of Unmovable played from Arsenal. That would shut me down, Razor or no Razor, but we will see if he has it here. And he actually lets this through for 4 damage. So that is going to give me my Dawnblade counter, which means that my weapon is going to get +1. This is extremely favorable for me, and I'm very happy to have it. But it probably means that he has something big coming, so I'm kind of bracing myself for what's going to happen next. Furthermore, the hits that I landed that turn, so he actually let in 11 damage, which was enough to make it so that even though he had a life lead at the start of the turn, he's now at a substantial life disadvantage, and my Arcanite Skullcap can no longer block, which puts me in an awkward position. So he's going to come in here with an Enlightened Strike. I believe it's an E-Strike 7, but I'm not sure. So E-Strike 7 here signals a potential Razor Reflex. I have an incredibly strong aggressive hand. Sometimes you might try to block up in a situation, but the problem is here, if he doesn't play the Razor, he could also use the Snapdragon Scalers. So if I overblock to 10, he can just use the Snapdragon Scalers and then hit me with whatever he plans to follow up with anyway. So my reasoning is, okay, Enlightened Strike, and this is a very strong card. I'm just going to highlight it here. I'm sure most of the people who are familiar with Flesh and Blood know this card. It's one of the best cards in the game. But for anyone newer who's watching this video, Enlightened Strike is a card. You do have to put an additional card from your hand on the bottom of your deck to pay for it as an additional cost. But it costs 0, it blocks for 3, and you get to choose one of 3 effects. So you can either come in at strength 5 and draw, you can come in at strength 7, or you can come in at strength 5 with Go Again. In this case, my opponent opts to come in for strength 7, I believe. And this is going to be a pretty dangerous attack. You know, if this attack gets through and does me a bunch of damage, then I'm going to be, taking 7, but it's nothing with a huge on hit. He then, as predicted, does have the Razor Reflex in Arsenal. I had been thinking earlier that card in Arsenal might have been a Lunging Press based on what he was doing in the turn where he was playing that Command and Conquer, but my prediction was off there. And the Razor Reflex comes in, so he's now actually hitting me for 10, and he's hitting me for 10 and if it hits Go Again. And so I don't really have anything to do here. I don't have any defense reactions. My plan is to just take this hit. It's a big hit, 10 damage is a lot, but it is also going to do so much damage to me that my Skullcap is going to be on again, which is a little bit of a reprieve in terms of potentially messing with further attacks that he might do this turn. So then let's see how he proceeds. 10 damage from an E-Strike Razor Reflex, though. That's big. Yeah, that's a quarter of your health in one go. The thing is, I really want to keep my cards in hand so I can throw out a giant turn on the next turn, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, I can do Spoils of War. So I can do Spoils of War into Ironsong Determination and then swing at Strength 7. So I can swing at Strength 7, Dominate, and Go Again. And that's just so dangerous. Plus the 2 copper on hit, not that the copper is that important. But it would allow me to do a really dangerous turn, and so I'm feeling pretty optimistic about that, but we'll have to see how it goes. He's thinking about how he wants to do his attacks, I think. He does still have the 2 cards. If this is all he's doing, though, I'm actually in a great situation, because if this is all that he's doing, I can come back with my huge turn. I took 10 damage, but I'm thinking that I'm probably going to do more on this turn, or at the very least get a bunch of stuff out of his hand. So right now I'm not feeling terrible about this. I guess he's actually considering... Oh, I think he used his Tunic for the pitch. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so then he pitches a yellow Rising Knee Thrust and comes in with a Karachi Swing. So that's just a combo piece that he's not using. So this is going to give his Karachi Go Again, though, because it's a 0 cost. I block with my Skullcap here. The reason that I'm doing that is because if his remaining card is like a red leg tap or a Soulbead Strike or a Torrent of Tempo, he could play it from hand, and then if it hit, it would get a draw, and I would have to block it with 2 things. And in this case, I would rather block that one and just be willing to take the hit against the big attack. It's possible that I should have let it through, though, and then if he did a big attack, I could block with 1 card in hand plus my bracers. But I thought in this case that I would rather just stop the middle, which is often the most efficient pattern to use against the Mask of Momentum. So the reason this is so important is because a ninja opponent with that Mask of Momentum, if they land 3 hits in a row, they're going to get a card draw, which can fuel even more aggression with all their Go Again. So at this moment we have a funny situation because of some lag. I'm trying to drag those little ghost stones or counters there to be a second counter on my skull cap. But for whatever reason the lag is preventing me from seeing it. So I actually just move the counter from the bolters there, which have been destroyed, onto the skull cap instead. A little silly maybe. On my turn, I have the Strength 4 Dawnblade. Now it's time for me to go big. This is my opportunity to try and do a ton of damage and maybe take some tempo. I'm going to go for the Spoils of War. I was just checking my arsenal. I have the Razor Reflex in there. I'm going to pitch the yellow Hit and Run. I actually have in case he has like a red unmovable, I actually have a Twinning Blade that I can play. Now, suddenly there is a glitch, and all of a sudden, all those counters that I had been dragging on there suddenly spawn. It looks like I've used my skull cap like 5 or 6 times. Interesting little bug there. Raven the Red says, for shame, Tunic triggers. Yeah, I missed my Tunic trigger this turn. I don't think he missed his last turn, though. I think he actually used his Tunic on that turn to play that Razor Reflex. So it's not us both being bad, it's just me being bad this time. I had an earlier game where missing a Tunic trigger really cost me in a testing game that I was playing, and you gotta get more consistent about that. I actually tend to allow missed Tunic triggers because I think it's kind of silly, but for myself, I'm trying to be strict with myself so that I learn how to do it properly. His hand wasn't showing up thanks to the lag, so I just had him flip it. Little pro tip there for using Tabletop Simulator. If the cards in someone's hand aren't showing up, that can be thanks to lag, and it can usually be fixed by having the host flip and unflip the cards. So just highlight them and press F. And that actually does not show the opponent the cards if they are in the hand zone, so you can use that, with your opponent's hand, with your hand, and really ensure that things are good. Sometimes works with things on the table as well. So I'm coming in with my huge attack. I have that +1 counter, so I'm Strength 4. Then I have the +2 from the Spoils of War. Then I have the +1 from the Ironsong Determination. So I'm coming in at Strength 7, Go Again, Dominate, and 2 copper on hit. This is a very dangerous turn. I also have the opportunity to potentially use that Razor Reflex that I have in Arsenal. So, and if he does have a giant block, I can instead play the Twinning Blade from hand to get a second attack and then use the potion to swing to try to avoid losing my Dawnblade counter. So that would be another option available to me. Overall, it really is a pretty scary, threatening turn that I have access to here. Let's see how my opponent responds to this gigantic attack. So, I only have the 1x copy of Ironsong Determination, and usually I actually like to pitch it early and then bring it back in the later game. But in this situation, I'm thinking this is a great time to use it, because by playing that Ironsong Determination, I am essentially quite increasing the chance that I'm going to be able to keep this Dawnblade counter. It's possible that an opponent could stop it with like a really big block, but with Dominate, that's not going to be the case. In fact, I think it's often correct to overblock against a Dawnblade with a counter on it, just to try to ensure that that counter gets knocked off, because if the opponent gets to retain the counter, you could really be in a lot of trouble. The Dawnblade counter is pretty crucial to the warrior game plan, just in terms of all of a sudden your basic attack is going above there's that important breakpoint at Strength 4, where a Strength 3 attack can be blocked by one card, but a Strength 4 attack can't. So having the Dawnblade go from 3 to 4 with that counter all of a sudden makes it a lot more difficult to block. It interestingly also encourages the opponent to block in order to try to knock the counter off. So there's an interesting effect where it's kind of it kind of creates a tug of war in some sense, where on the one hand, they're like, okay, well, it's hard. It's it's going to be harder to block. Maybe I'll just let it hit for 1. But then on the other hand, if they let you do that, you're going to keep that counter, and they're going to keep being faced with it. So there is the argument to go for a bigger block instead. My opponent leads off here with a single card block. And then I was going to correct him here because I thought he was playing a defense reaction from Arsenal, but it's actually Reinforce the Line. This is an interesting card. It's kind of a counter to Dominate and a counter to Command and Conquer. So this card functions very similarly to a defense reaction in that it gives a total of +4 to the defense, but it only applies to a defending attack action card, which makes it somewhat worse than a normal defense reaction under normal circumstances, because you might not have a defending attack action card with which to actually use this. But the upside of it is that there are a fair amount of effects that punish defense reactions in particular, or that make it so that an opponent can only defend with one card from hand. And because this is an instant, this is actually not a defending card. So he's able to play this and essentially do a 2-card block, 1 for 3 and 1 for 4 against my dominated attack. So interesting card there. Now Ninja is almost the only character that can play Reinforce the Line very reliably, because Reinforce the Line requires a defending attack action card, and most decks other than Ninja do not have a sufficient density of attack actions for this to be good. White Irinder in the chat says, I think it's underrated given how widely CNC is played. Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think that it can be a great surprise, and you can put it in Arsenal, and then someone does CNC, you block and then play it. Pretty sweet. So Brew Tapcast in chat says there is nothing to stop Dawnblade from getting multiple counters, correct? That is correct. You can keep building them up. The only thing is you lose them all at once. So building them up kind of increases the power and increases the stakes. So in that situation, I could have opted to go for the pitch or to the play Twinning Blade and then use Potion for the second attack. I was a little worried that there was a chance that he had a defense reaction in Arsenal, but instead I end up pitching the Twinning Blade to play the Razor Reflex, and that is enough to get in. He doesn't have a defense reaction waiting for me. So I've gone up to 10. I sneak in for 3 damage. I'm going to keep my Dawnblade counter, and then I get to make a second swing, and it's still buffed by the Ironsong Determination as well as by my +1. So this swing is actually coming in at a total of strength 5 with Dominate again. He could stop this, but assuming that he only has things that he has something that blocks for 3 in hand, he could stop this, but he would have to either lose his mask or use his block from both his Breaking Scales and his Tunic, and those are both really high impact things to lose. So I'm very happy about this situation. I think he probably can't block this, and I think that if he can block it, it's going to require him losing some of his important item stuff. And he indeed opts to not block it, which means that my Dawnblade gets a second +1 counter. So Brewtapcast was asking in chat whether it was possible to have multiple +1 counters on the Dawnblade. Yes, it is, and it just happened. So Dawnblade now with 2 +1 counters, strength 5 Dawnblade. I still have the potion. My opponent has a very limited turn. He pitches a copy of Find Center and comes in with a Kadachi Swing for 1. Now I actually have a very strange hand here. 2 copies of Command and Conquer, a Ironsong Response, and a Singing Steelblade. Kind of an awkward hand from me. He follows this one up with a Surging Strike for 5 with Go Again. So he doesn't have... I let him take his Tunic there even though he forgot. I prefer to be casual with these things even though I'm strict on it for myself. So I block with a single card and take 2. He has the natural combo. He has the second combo piece in Arsenal. So then he's coming in at strength 4 with Go Again, and if it hits it, will draw him a card. It will also draw him a second card from Mask. So I go for a 5 block there using the second CNC, which has less value now that he doesn't have a card in Arsenal, as well as the Refraction Bolters for my block. And the reason that I go for that is because he could use... I really want to make sure that he doesn't get the card draws from that and from Mask, which could allow him to have a much bigger turn. Now he doesn't have a card in hand. My own situation is kind of dubious, though, but I do still have that Dawnblade with 2 counters on it, and that's going to see me in good stead, I think. So in this situation, I use my Energy Potion to get the 2 energy, which is going to allow me to swing and still have 1 left over to play Singing Steelblade if I have to, which can potentially get me either more attack reactions for stats, or what I'm really hoping to do is Singing Steelblade into Glint, which would give me the Go Again that I would need to make a second attack. So my dream here is that he blocks for exactly 5, and then I'm going to play the Singing Steelblade for the Glint. White Irinder says Potion is big here. Yeah, it is. And Brewtapcast said Brutal. Yeah, getting the multiple Dawnblade counters is really nasty. So this is just a basic weapon swing that costs me 1 energy, but it's coming in at, for strength 5. So even though I only had a 2-card hand here, the fact that I had this potion and have the Dawnblade counters actually makes my turn really scary. And that's one of the kind of alternate resources that you can have sometimes in the game. So my opponent goes for a big block, He blocks for a total of 8. So he has 1 3 block, 2 2 blocks, and then the 1 block from his breaking scales. So blocking for 8 does mean that a single attack reaction for +3, like the Iron Song response, is not going to get in. But I actually have a pretty good situation here. I'm going to play my Singing Steel Blade. Oh, I was going to highlight it, but then I missed it just by a split second. I'm going to back up the video again so we can catch that highlight. So Singing Steel Blade, kind of a complicated card. So the way that this one works is target weapon attack gets +1 attack. And then if the defending hero has defended with a card from their hand this chain link, search your deck for an attack reaction card, banish it face up, and then shuffle. You may play it this chain link. So I'm going to use this to search for a Glint the Quicksilver, which is going to get me Go Again and draw me a card. Then I'm going to play the Iron Song response that I also have in hand for a total of +4, which is enough to sneak over his overblock by 3. And then the extra card that I draw from the Glint the Quicksilver is going to give me at least 1 energy, which I can then pitch in order to swing my Dawnblade again for 5, which he will not be able to block unless he has something really weird. Of course, if he has a defense reaction in hand to stop me here, that's just going to be that, and I'm going to be sad. But I believe he does not. So I land the 1 damage, and then I'm going to use Dorinthea's ability. When your weapon attack hits, you may attack an additional time with target weapon this turn. And then pitch and Dawnblade coming in again for 5. And he actually, so he could, if his card is a 3 block, he could block with it plus his mask. If it's a 2 block, he could block with it plus his mask and his tunic. But I'm still going to keep my 2 counters. So he's really in a lot of trouble with this one. And we'll see what he chooses to do here. At this point, I feel really good about this game. I think I was losing a bit earlier after I had some kind of awkward, non-aggressive hands. But I managed to get back into it. When he let me get that Dawnblade counter, and then he came in with a turn of his own. I think his turn wasn't quite as big as he was hoping, or I didn't block as much as he thought I might. I accidentally keep stacking up the counters there, but I do have the 3. And so now with these Dawnblade counters, the momentum has really been... The game's really shifted and the momentum's in my court, but we'll see whether or not I can keep it up. On his turn, he's just going to Arsenal and pass. I draw my hand, but it doesn't show up. I believe thanks to the same lag issues that I was discussing earlier, so I'm going to have my opponent flip over my hand, I believe. Yeah, so he is now flipping my cards in hand. And I see a strong hand here. I have another Spoils of War, and then I have a blue Iron Song response. So I'm going to play Spoils of War, pitching Hit and Run, and swinging for a total of 8 with Go Again. And if it hits, I'll get 2 copper. Not that that matters. But 8 damage here is not, I think, the most fun thing to see coming at you. So these tunic counters have really, these Dawnblade counters have really added up to the point where I'm now just making, my base weapon strength is 6. So now just with 1 card and 1 pitch, I'm threatening a strength 8 attack. I do have an Iron Song response in hand. It's only a blue one, but it could give me that cheeky +1, which would be enough to sneak in there if he blocks for exactly 8. So Raven the Red says 3 Dawnblade counters is just insane. Yeah, it's crazy. White Irinder says I'd probably just block with whole hand here, and that is, I believe, what he does. So he's blocking for a total of 12 with his tunic. Brutapcast says it just runs away with the game, and White Irinder says need to get rid of the counters. Yeah, so my opponent agrees. He does a huge blocking for 12. He overblocked using his mask just in case I had another reaction. And then I follow it up by playing a Flock of the Featherwalkers coming in at strength 5. I have to reveal this card in hand to do it, but it comes in with strength 5 and it is going to get me a Quicken counter. Now we have a bit of lag issues with the Quicken counter, or the Quicken token, but he picks it up for me and there it shows up there. So this is going to give my next attack Go Again. It's also going to deal 5 damage to him because his hand is empty. He could have blocked with his tunic, I guess, but he almost certainly doesn't want to do that. And while I did lose my 3 Dawnblade counters, I still landed 5 damage, and he doesn't really get a next turn. So I am feeling very good about the state of the tempo, especially because I also got that Quicken token set up for me. So not the situation that he's happiest about, I must imagine. He is going to go ahead and drop. So I am going to be able to do a very, very aggressive turn. I have the blue Iron Song response in Arsenal, which isn't great. So I take my Tunic, and then, so I have Tunic, and I have an E-Strike in hand. I have the Ravenous Rabble in hand, and I have this natural go again from the Quicken token, which means that I'm looking at doing at least 3 attacks here. And the question is how I want to do that. So I'm going to lead off with the E-Strike. And so with the E-Strike here, he's only at 3 life. I opt to do an E-Strike 5 draw card in order to fuel more attacks with the rest of the hand. And so 5 coming in is already going to be a problem for him. He may have to double block it anyway, so I'm thinking, if he was going to double block against a 7 and take 1, he may have to double block against the 5 anyway and not take 2. That's what I'm thinking about it now. I wasn't considering that precisely then, I think. But even the E-Strike 5, if he blocks with 1 card, he's down to 1 life, and that puts him in what I call the Steelblade Shunt zone, where you can just die instantly. So he does go for a double block, though he manages to block it completely with a double block, even though it uses a card that blocks for 2. So an E-Strike 7 might have done some more damage, or he might have just blocked a little differently. I come in with the Ravenous Rabble, revealing my top card. It reveals an Iron Song Response Red, one of the best attack reactions I have access to. So that also means this is going to come in for 4 with Go Again. I'm a little mixed on the Ravenous Rabble. I'm actually considering cutting it. I've been looking at some potential changes to the deck, and cutting Ravenous Rabble is definitely a option that I've been considering. But the when it's good, it's really good. The issue is just the inconsistency. Sometimes you do get those games where all your Ravenous Rabbles hit blue, even though that's statistically unlikely. So in any case, that one was for 4, though. He blocks with another card and takes 1. Then I come in with the Dawnblade for 3. He blocks with his last card, and I know that now I have him because I can play Glint the Quicksilver. It's going to give me the Go Again, but more importantly, it's going to give me the draw, and I know what the top card of my deck is. The top card of my deck is going to be that copy of Iron Song Response that I just showed with my Ravenous Rabble. So because the top card was revealed, I know what it is. I'm able to come in there with it, and it is actually going to close out the game. He doesn't really have anything left, and then this Iron Song Response lands to end the game. So yeah, that was my semifinals match there against Slidemo. Good game, Slidemo. I had played against him. I think he had done fairly well in the previous season of the UK Online League. I think maybe I played against him in the top cut there as well. And so having won that game, I'm going to move on, and my final will be against Big Med Psi. I pronounced it earlier. I incorrectly pronounced it Big Med Psi. That's wrong. It's Big Med Psi. He pointed that out to me, and my apologies to Big Med Psi for the mispronunciations on his name earlier. So he and I are going to face off. I'm actually not sure what deck he's running, but we're going to face off in the finals sometime soon. And I will try to get that game recorded and broadcast for you guys as well. So, exciting game there. Ultimately a win. I do think this is kind of a favored matchup for Warrior, I have to say. I feel like Aggro Ninja has some trouble blocking. Those 2 blocks can be really awkward at stopping all the damage. And in general, if the game just turns into a race where both people are doing all their stuff, Warrior has the advantage because of that Dawnblade counter build-up. So, yeah, interesting game. I want to give a shout out to BaboYam88 for the follow. Thank you for the follow on this video. And BaboYam88 says good luck in the finals. BrewTapCast also wishing me best of luck. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Should be a fun event, and win or lose, I hope to broadcast it. BaboYam88 says, before you head off, would you happen to have your Dory Blitz list that you showcased a couple of days ago, thinking of running it for my Armory event this weekend? Yeah, so the Dory Blitz list that I was running, that was the one that I was running, what game was that? Oh, yeah, that was the one from the Alara Games tournament. That's right, the Alara Games online Armory event. I think I have that list saved somewhere here. Let me just find it for you, and I'll post that list into the chat. Any other while I'm doing that, any other questions, thoughts, or things from the viewers here? Let's see here. Okay, so let's take a quick look. I'm just gonna look through my archive here of some messages, and I think I had set somebody else this deck list. For the Dory Blitz, what's the strategy against a wizard? So this one has so I have the deck list here. Let me just put it in the chat. But so the strategy for the deck list is basically going to be that you're going to be more aggro. It's a really tall deck. So it's going to try to just break through people's defenses. Most people aren't playing big defense reactions in the Blitz format. Even the decks that are like defense reactions themselves are kind of rare, and even the ones that are played are usually the smaller ones instead of the big ones. So that should be a working FabDB link to my Dory Blitz deck. And the strategy against a wizard, the deck has an unusual amount of blue. So what you're going to want to do is just try to push damage through with your attack reactions. You're going to want to be the aggressor. So I do typically equip, I would want to equip 3 Null Runes. So I would do Null Rune, Hood, Gloves, and what is it? Hood, Gloves, Robe, and then keep the Refraction Bolters in order to fuel more aggression. So you have a lot of blue in the deck, and you have a lot of blue in the deck, and you have Arcane Barrier 3, which should allow you to protect yourself against somewhat from from the stuff that Wizard is doing. But the main game plan is going to be more aggressive against them and push more damage through than they can to you, and try to get them blocking, try to push through those blocks with your attack reactions, and really put the pressure on them. Don't let them set up a huge combo, because if a wizard can set up a big enough combo, it's going to be really hard to stop them with essentially any deck. And as a result of that, you really need to be considering, how can I get them before that happens. So the deck does run a barrier 3, a total of Arcane Barrier 3, but it does not try to play a long game against Wizard. That's more for incidental scenarios. So like one example would be if they zap you on the first turn and you have one of those blue things available, or you just can afford to pitch a bunch of stuff, that's a good time to use it. I would not base my game plan on trying to tank what they're doing with the Arcane Barrier. It's more that you just want to have it there for when it really counts. So that's the game plan against a wizard. That's like just the basic game plan, at least. And yeah, the list is in the chat now. That should do it. So BaboYam88, if you do end up running that list for the Armory event this weekend, let me know how it goes. I'd be excited to hear back and see how my deck list did for you in that context. I may be running that deck or some other version of it or something similar in future games of my own. So I'm going to be doing some more content on that as well. And then one last thing, BaboYam88 says, KK, thank you for the insight. Last question. Against a Brute, I've found that without a defense reaction arsenal, it gets hard to block them due to Intimidate. Lost a game like that a while back. With only Steelblade Shunt and needing resources to pay for it, is there a way around to dealing with Brute? Yeah, okay, so that's an interesting question. So for me, I think that against Brute, you just want to be more aggressive. I do not like playing defense reactions in Blitz for other matchups. In Classic Constructed, I like playing the Springboard Somersault against Brute. I think it's an excellent card because you can just put that right into Arsenal, and then it can be that extra thing to stop them. But yeah, for this Blitz deck, you're generally going to want to be more aggressive against Brute if possible. I think there might be a free item slot. If there's a free item slot, you could try slotting in a Fyendal Spring Tunic and using that, which will allow you to, if you charge up the Tunic and keep the counter on there, you can then put Shunt into Arsenal and play it without having to pitch a card, which is really helpful against Brute. But I'm not entirely sure that would be the thing that I would most want to do. I think probably I'm just going to try to be the aggressor in that matchup. One thing I will say is that against the Dice Roll Brute KO, I do have a copy of Gambler's Gloves in the equipment loadout there, and I do equip that just to try to mess with what they're doing. Normally, you're going to want to use that if they roll high on a big attack, especially a CNC. You're going to want to use that to try to just break their momentum. So yeah, that's my basic game plan against Brute. I do agree that it's a little worse off against that than in Classic Constructed when I can tailor for that matchup more specifically. But honestly, I haven't been seeing a lot of Brute overall. So, it may depend on what you see in your area. I do think that Springboard Somersault would be a good option. I think Springboard Somersault would be a good option if you were trying to add something to deal with Brute. And it generally helps against a lot of the more aggressive decks in general. I just don't like it necessarily because I feel like I'm already playing a deck that is, I already have a few non-aggressive cards and I really want to be focused on the aggressive game plan. So I've not put those Springboard Somersaults in, but I would quite like them. I would quite like to be running them if I had the opportunity without cutting some of the core functions of the deck. Okay, so I think that's everything. And thanks to you guys for watching. We're going to be back later with some more Flesh and Blood content. So I am going to be streaming some. Other games, just whenever they come up. But for the scheduled streams, 5:00 p.m. Pacific, 8:00 p.m. Eastern. That's when I'm going to be doing the scheduled streams. So feel free to hop on at those times if you want to catch some more content. And BaboYam88, I would love to hear. I'd love to hear you check back and let me know how the deck did. If it was a big success or even if it was a big failure for you. I'd be interested in hearing how it went. All right, so BrewTapCast sending me some beer emoji things, and BaboYam88 says, we'll let you know. Thank you again. Sounds good. So thanks again for watching, guys. We'll be back later with more Flesh and Blood, maybe some Star Wars Legion stuff too. And if you guys want to check out some written articles that I've done, you can check out towernumber9.com. It's in the bottom right of the video there. I do intend to do some more... written articles soon. I want to do one actually on the Alara Games tournament and the Dorinthea deck that I was playing in it. The one that I just linked here. I'm probably going to do a write-up on that in the near future. Either of the Alara Games tournament or of that plus some other tournaments that I might run the deck in. But I don't really, it's hard to say. It's possible that I'll end up, running, like maybe I'm going to run it and get killed and switch to running Kasai or something. You never know. But in any case, I am probably going to do some more writing on the blog about that. All right, that's going to do it. White Arendure says, good luck, see you in some skirmishes. Maybe, yeah, for people who are... Oh, actually, let me send you guys a link to that as well. There's one other thing I want to show you guys. So the skirmish events that are coming up, the official LSS event finder has some issues, in my opinion. And so I've made a spreadsheet that has more information on these events, and it's only for US players. So I apologize to you if you are a non-US player, but I'm going to throw the spreadsheet in chat here. And that's going to anyone who's interested in skirmishes, feel free to check that out with the dates and times and sign up links for those events. Yeah, so I've sent that there. White Arendure says I check it regularly. Haha. Yeah, I actually, you may have seen this. I actually had some updates to that spreadsheet just today. I've been doing strike through on some of the events that are sold out. Some of these events have reached their capacity, and so I've been doing some updates. And it isn't all the events. It only goes about a month out. So I do plan on keeping it updated throughout the skirmish season, but if you're a U.S. Flesh and Blood player and you are interested in doing some of the skirmish events, you can check out that spreadsheet, and it is going to have a little more information on those, as well as the event link or contact information, because I found that the official LSS one was lacking on some information and seems to have some weird behavior with respect to time zones as well. In any case, I think I've started signing out and then had something interesting several times now. But this time for real, guys, I'm going to be signing off, and we'll be streaming more 5:00 p.m. live at 5. 5:00 p.m. Pacific, 8:00 p.m. Eastern next Tuesday. We're going to be doing that on next Thursday as well, God willing. And I'm hoping to have more recorded stuff soon. Also, potentially stay tuned for other content that is going to be just from the less setup stuff. One other thing. BrewTapCast in the chat saying he's asking if any of the skirmish events are going to be Tabletop Simulator or if they're all going to be webcam based. Unfortunately, in my opinion at least, they have officially ruled that Tabletop Simulator is not allowed for the skirmish series. They have to be on webcam. But because you're saying that you're looking for webcam games and haven't made the jump to TTS, that may be to your advantage, BrewTapcast. So yeah, all those skirmish events are going to be webcam coordinated with Discord or similar. All right, guys, that's going to do it. I'm signing off for the 4th or 5th time now. Just keep having interesting things come up. But yeah, that's going to do it, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll be back later with some more Flesh and Blood content. I will catch you guys later.